out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Ohayo gozaimasu, Tim-san.
Wow. Hi, Ryan.
And hello, good morning.
I have no idea what you just said.
I said just that, I think. Hello, good morning to everyone else listening outside of our fair dismembering horror office. And I say it's our dismembering horror office because this is Dismembering Horror, the podcast where myself, Ryan McDuffie,
and myself, Tim Haslin,
we dismember a horror film that we've been wanting to see, that we're curious about, that you recommended to us.
Ooh.
And what does that mean to dismember? Well, first we talk about what worked for us subjectively, and then
what didn't work for us?
Yeah, and then we'll wrap it up with, well, anything we found interesting or noteworthy, observationally, factoidy, doesn't quite fit into what worked or what didn't. And we have fun all therein, going down all sorts of hoary holes.
Oh, no.
Do not.
I don't think that's the right way to put it.
It's why I pronounce our show horror. I'm always dismembering horror.
Oh, that's very southern of you.
Horror.
Horror.
Right.
Horror.
We watch horror films.
Well,
and we watched a horror film.
Didn't we?
Today, or 2 days ago.
Oh, man.
It was fun.
Yep.
We're wrapping up from our last episode, Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, where our special guest, Peter Warden, selected this film from our hat for us.
Yep.
So I always like to think our two guests that we've had, you know, they sort of decide our fate. It's exciting.
Yeah, what did Michael pull? He pulled something good.
Yeah.
He didn't know.
Was it Calvaire that he pulled?
Yeah, I think so, because he didn't know of it.
It was like a French word. Yeah, Calvaire. He pulled that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite films that we've watched.
Oh, man.
I wanted to say, Tim, so I've for the first time in the history of our podcast, I have rewatched a film that we reviewed for our show, that we watched and reviewed for our show. I gave Mandy a second go
man,
around.
I'm so close to doing that again. So I turned on Beyond the Rainbow. What is it called?
Beyond the Black Rainbow.
That's right, Beyond the Black Rainbow, and tried to get into that. And I mean, it's cool, but it's missing a thing that Mandy has, I think.
Yeah, I don't want to. I think we talked about it in our Mandy episode, but like
you mentioned a couple things.
Yeah, I think my short was it where it was like Mandy, the style was serving the substance, and then it was kind of vice versa with Beyond the Black Rainbow. But I mean, again, it has its fans, and maybe I just need to see it again. Blah blah blah.
Don't get me wrong; I think it's cool.
Yeah,
but it's such a I think you need to be in kind of a certain place to sit down and really get into it.
Totally.
And I was distracted, and so it was hard for me to kind of.
Well, I wanted to say about Mandy, I think it held up even better on a second viewing.
That's my assumption.
And and I know it's fun. We want to talk about the new films and go to the theaters to see the new films, but I always preface that with being yeah, even if it was my new all-time favorite movie, I'm probably not going to know it on the first time. Good movies, I got to kind of soak into.
Yeah.
Let it sit, let it separate from when it was kind of released, let it harden, take it out of the oven, let it harden a bit.
Man, your analogy is right, spot on today. Great. What's going on?
Maybe it's the film that we watched. Hentai!
Oh my god.
But yeah, no, I remember my little qualms with Mandy were the second half, it wasn't as crazy about as the first half because I wanted a little more just kind of from kind of the action scenes or blah, blah, blah. But this time around, I thought that there really was not even trickled through, more than trickled through, plenty of it kept up all the stylistic elements that I liked in the first half, the kind of moody things that were still there in a way I don't think I was aware of the first time around. And then I realized this time around that if it had done kind of more or excess that we were kind of hoping for and maybe kind of built up in our head of this kind of like crazy all out thing, it wouldn't have felt appropriate to kind of the world that it had built. It felt like it kind of would have undermined a lot of the seriousness that was really hitting me this time around too.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to sit down and watch it again.
And then watching it with a friend who hadn't seen it before, he was like so into it. Like from the opening credits, he's like, I didn't know I could love a movie this much. Kind of thing. He's like super
it's
into King.
True though,
he's super into King Crimson the Metal. Yeah.
Oh fuck! Then I mean, shit. It's like the perfect thing for him.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off.
No, well, it's just that thing that like, it's so fucking. What? I don't even know how to describe it. It's like, it's so of a note that is like pleasing to, and I assume this is it's sort of a carryover of like why Stranger Things it feels so good, is because it's hitting this note of nostalgia, but also like, I don't know, it's kind of dreamy and it's weird and ethereal and has like an otherworldly and yet a super familiar world thing going on at the same time.
1983 AD.
Yeah.
It's not 1980, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's so cool. Right? So I'm excited to watch again. I just got to carve the time out because I still have not. I'm just going to jump your bit because I have not seen I Saw the Devil.
Okay. Great. That's not none of us. Yeah. That's usually I say for the end, but we have a segment on our show where I asked Tim if he's seen I Saw the Devil yet.
Yep. I haven't.
Thanks for just letting us know up front. Well, we got another Japanese movie. That one's Korean, but I just mean I get excited when we watch these A-horror films. And Tim had not seen Audition.
I was scared.
Good. Well, should we watch the trailer and get scared again?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, we watched Audition.
あさみ本当にオーディションするのか何もお前の再婚相手を探すためだけにオーディションするわけじゃないよ
山崎あさみです
俺はもう決めた
あんたあの女を見たのかあの女の体に触ったのか
私だけは愛してくれなきゃ嫌よこの人はいけません言葉なんか嘘だけど痛みだけは信じれるのよあなたは私の全部にはなってくれないのね
Certainly not leaving anything to the imagination with that trailer.
Yeah, it shows a surprising amount, not just in giving things away, but being graphic. Like, usually trailers hold back on that. So if you haven't seen Audition, you shouldn't listen to this. You shouldn't watch the trailer that we just watched.
Yeah, don't watch that. Jesus.
Just watch it, man.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Just watch it.
Yeah. Start a podcast, put it in the hat, and then watch it that way.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well,
we rate it. We have our rating system. We say, would we tell ourselves, again, we aren't any authority subjectively telling ourselves, would we avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it? What worthy level is it?
I think for me, I would rent this. Yeah, I would rent this. There are certain things about it that on its surface, I was like, I think actually this is problematic.
Mm-hmm.
But after thinking about it a little bit, it's not. It's like playing off of some tropes that are problematic, but actually kind of subverting them.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to get through the first half of the movie, which is, a little, I don't want to say slow, but it's not the second half.
Yeah. It makes the second half work.
Right. So you do have to get through it. I think that would be the kind of the broadest like argument maybe you could make to not rent it, but
I will say that
for me,
yeah,
it was worth getting through and then getting to that to the finale and everything.
I remember feeling that way more the first time I watched it. It was probably like 10 years ago, but this second time it right maybe when it was about to kind of like feel long, it went off.
I can definitely see how in a second viewing, when you obviously know where it's going, you're going to be able to peel back a lot of little clues and a lot more.
Well, it's fun too. You just kind of, I don't know, you let it, I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
The anticipation of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
What about you?
Oh man, what about me? I was definitely thinking like rent it throughout. But then that last chunk, you know what I'm talking about.
I sure do.
When he gets drugged and passes out, and you're like, where are we? When are we? How are we? What are we? That's the kind of stuff, Tim, that makes me want to buy it. You know that. Yeah.
No, I get that. I guess my previous point is like maybe a better way of saying that it's rather than it's the thing that's keeping it from a stream, it's just barely the thing that's keeping it from a buy as well.
Yeah.
Because I love this, the third act, what the fuckism of it, that makes you, the audience, like really be like, hang on, like what am I seeing? Like, where am I? I like that type of thing, which actually, to our previous point, like Mandy has a lot of. If I guess you could, for me, like I would want more of that to get myself to a buy.
Yeah. I mean, you could look at it as though it's all the first half, whatever, is all evidence for that later half. And
totally.
It's all of a sudden with that new context becomes that. And I think what I was trying to say earlier, not so much the anticipation of what happens next, but the suspense is just so great after you've seen it the first time. And it's almost the kind of suspense where it's like, I was just enjoying like reading into their characters so much that I had that sort of fun, like when you're watching a horror movie, it's like that equivalent of, oh, I just want to see them have a nice vacation and not get murdered by, a slasher villain. Like, this is fun, you know, getting caught up in that not lull, but
sure. Yeah.
That place. So I was finding myself in that place this time that I enjoyed it a lot more. I don't know, man. I'm just sorry. I'm being non-committal here to rent it or buy it. Dude. I don't know. Like, I feel like it's a buy it quality film for me, but I don't need to see it all that often.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather probably have, even though I think I gave it a rent it, like if I could get my Ring Collection Blu-ray box set for like a discount value, just for the flavor of what that is more my speed.
Yeah.
Versus this. Like, I like that kind of J-horror.
Okay.
Like a bit more. But I acknowledge too just how much this did for horror, and again, like what we've already always said when we sort of watch classics or the first ones to do something, that it's the best. It will always be almost the best at it. It's the purest of whatever it is it's doing. Cat people getting stalked down the street. Even though it's like, oh, it's familiar, it's not scary. No, it's kind of the ultimate that.
Yeah. That was a good scene.
Okay, whatever. I'm going to say super, super hardy rent it. Maybe I'll regret it later.
Fair enough.
All right. Summary.
Summary.
We got a widow who, Japanese man.
Widow.
Widow.
His name, I can't. I tried even in listening to how it was said in the movie.
Aoyama.
It didn't register for me. Like, I don't think Aoyama.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem right.
Aoyama.
Okay.
It's just what we're working with here.
Okay, fair enough. So Okay, so he's a widower.
Yeah, and it's funny because I thought I was putting him at more like he looked in his 50s maybe, but no, he was in his early 40s.
If not late 30s.
Yeah.
Like
smoker.
Because, yeah, right. His son, I would say, in the opening scene when the wife dies, the son walks in with like a thing that he made for the mom, and that kid was no more than like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And so that kid is still in high school.
Yeah.
So if you're a dad, you've got an 8-year-old, you're somewhere around late 20s, early 30s, and then it's 10 years after that. So we're late 30s.
Well, the actor was like early 40s, I think I realized.
Sure.
When I put him as a lot older.
I mean, he's got to be... Anyway, why are we going down this path?
Yeah, we
Here
got a quick summary.
Quick summary. So
we got the widower.
So we got a 40-ish widower
Yeah.
with an 18-year-old son.
Works in the...
It's 10 years after or 8 years after
works
his
in the
wife's
film
death.
industry. He's lonely.
He's like he works in like promos or something like that.
Still loves his wife very, very much, who's
Totally.
passed away. But at his son's suggestion, decides, maybe I need to get out in there, the dating scene again.
Not even. He's just like, you should get married again.
Yeah.
Because you
The
look
Japanese
worn out.
equivalent of that, maybe. It's like, get a wife.
Yeah.
So then he falls through, oh yeah, how do I get a wife? And his buddy at his at the film company is like, well, let's, we'll make a movie here, and whether or not the movie gets made or not, we'll just use it as an excuse to do this audition process. Right. You look at the things, you look at the woman's headshots and descriptions. He says, be sure you read what they have to say too.
Yeah.
And then you picked, was it 20 or 30 of them to come in?
Right.
They audition them. The one that becomes the apple of his eye.
Yeah, he finds her because Kismet, he stains her resume with some coffee and he pulls it.
Yeah. That was, yeah. But it's what she wrote, even though she's was early 20s age, like 23, 24, something like that.
Yeah.
She talked about kind of death and the purpose of life kind of thing that just hooked him.
Yeah.
Like he said he wanted someone mature, and putting it as a sort of, accomplished, mid-30s, late 30s businesswoman.
Right.
But I think what he actually turns out he meant by that was someone with a sort of old soul perspective on life.
But young and hot.
Yeah.
Best of both worlds is what he wants. The sin.
And yeah, I guess it's, we'll get into their characters, but he's, I don't know. No, we can do that later. What else
I
for
think
the summary? And then
the important part is that they get together and there's a big question mark about her past and her intentions.
Right.
And
a lot of holes in her.
To be honest, we leave with a big question mark.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it.
Well, I guess to finish it, basically, they, after a few very stoic dates, dinner dates or whatever, they go to where a beachside hotel where he plans to propose, and then somewhere around there they sleep with each other, we think, and maybe Tim's shaking his head like, who the fuck knows?
Yeah,
excuse my F-bomb.
I think they do. Well, if you're quoting me, you're being accurate.
You're right, I was quoting you. I try to limit it, but and then it's just the movie goes off the rails, and his basic his search for more about her past and putting together what happened and imagining what the possibilities about her are all become combined, merged, and blurred.
Yeah.
But we think maybe it culminates in a real life kind of home invasion scene.
Right.
And she's obsessed with the idea of having someone give all their love to her.
All of it.
All of it. No one else. Not even his kid, not even his dog. And then him deep down, he has that, societally misogynistic view of wanting the sort of dedicated, so she takes that kernel of a real thing to a more extreme. So he's guilty, even though he's a nice guy.
Yeah. Is he?
He's aloof.
Yeah, he's pretty nice. You're right. He's aloof.
Which is what a lot of people are.
Yep.
Great.
Not me. I'm the opposite of aloof. I'm a fool.
Fluffy. You're a fool?
Yeah.
Why do you look at me like, do I get it?
I just made that up. The opposite of aloof is a fool.
But fools are aloof.
Oh, fuck.
It's not the opposite.
Damn it, it doesn't work.
Okay, we got a lot to talk about here for what worked, Tim. So can
right.
we get into it? What worked?
Do we have to say anything else before that?
No.
Great.
What worked?
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
Where to begin? I think before we get into the sort of craziness of the movie, I think the humor and the sort of pacing and the editing, or the how the humor is executed is so fucking good. Mm-hmm. Like the entire audition scene is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to compare it to. But here's the thing, you've seen this done after this movie was made a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. Like 40-Year-Old Virgin does it when they go speed dating.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's these almost quick cuts of just like, just little snapshots of the absurdity of the thing and the absurdity of how people behave.
Well,
and just the like vast sort of swath of character.
I think, yes, that's happening. The swath of character and just kind of that visceral montage feel is part of the humor for sure. But to use that as a comparison, where it's like that movie, it's all from Steve Carell's perspective, and it really is the perspective of just these men objectifying the women, right? I think even though you could say that's what's face value is going on in Audition, I don't think it's that at all. I really think like how the characters are presented and how it's shot for me get at the underlying tension and therefore humor of how even though these guys think they're like, oh yeah, we're doing this thing, you know, we don't take it as far, we maybe think it's wrong on some level and it's making us uncomfortable, but whatever, we're just doing it, think we're right doing it or whatever, that's not even an issue. You also have the women, especially when our main gal comes in, Asami, that it's not like she's being given a lot of power in the situation as far as how she's shot, how she's the one in control in a lot of ways. Even though she's the one at Audition, she is the one who's measured in the way that she acts and put together. So I think that's a lot of the humor kind of comes from seeing this on the part of the men's, this like trepidation in what they're doing at all.
Well, I would argue that only one of them is feeling that.
The main guy. Yeah, they represent, I really like that about it actually.
Yeah.
How the two guys, our main guy, he's like, we sympathize with him just enough because he's showing like hesitation and awkwardness out of doing this at all. And it's a sort of his buddy who's just kind of like representing the society norms of like, oh, that's whatever. Yeah.
Well, and there's a real dark sort of side to not only the setup of why they're doing it, but just in general what it is to like objectifyingly audition people. You know, like that whole process sucks.
But he says like, I feel like a criminal. You know?
Yeah. I mean, because it's like this is a quote unquote age old, you know, construct.
Yeah.
It's like the man in power creating a scenario where he can get his cake and eat it too kind of thing. And it's gross. Something
like it's definitely going on, but I really love how it's, I guess, kind of transition, but come off that, how it's shot like that scene. It does, everything it does is showing the men are, even if that one guy sort of shows confidence in what they're doing is maybe somehow passable, they're both shot in such a way where they feel like the kind of awkward, like aloof ones. We'll use that word again.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what's working so well and how they executed this is it's not just exploiting the guy as like the auditioner, the guy who's done this a million times, as being malicious or gross about it. He's detached from it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's doing it because that's what you do.
Right. He doesn't say a word till the
No, I'm
Asami
talking
pops up.
I'm saying the other guy. The
yeah.
other guy that is the job, and he's detached from this process.
Right. It's like anyone who does a job that's
so much so that
requires
it's like
disassociation.
I think he can intellectually understand that this is, you know, a cliche in a way, but he's like, dude, it's just what we do. So he's towing this line of the norm. But he's not really commenting on it. He's just sort of like, yeah, this is how it goes.
Right.
And he's just doing the process, and he's done it a million times, and it's just rote.
And
whereas the other dude who doesn't say anything, like
guy,
he's the other end of
Aoyama.
the spectrum, where he was sort of like, he's got an eye in on it going, fuck, like this is like, you're doing this thing. Like, and you don't even seem to care that, like, what this actually is.
Well, it's like...
And that's cool to have that kind of perspective and commentary, because he's essentially us. We're him. The audience is him in that scene.
It's... Yeah. I'm just again, like, I want to make more examples of how it's shot and how it's... What's so good about it is it's doing these two things. It's like... It's playing off of this whole... like, the whole crazy, like, feminine mystique thing, where it's like when... from the men's point, it's basically from the men's point of like default point of view, as well as I was saying, like the Asami sort of in power. So it's like you have when she first sits down, it's like we see her, it's like kind of she's far away, or like we're never sort of close up to her super clear.
The first time she sits down, we're behind her,
exactly.
So we do not see her face at all.
So that's
pretty good.
Right. So that's the kind of thing that makes me feel like she's the one kind of in control, yet also mysterious, you know, playing up with that, with his sort of growing interest in her. It's sort of, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. I was doing those two things.
Well, it's great because the lead up to that is dehumanizing in such a way. You know, it's this just cavalcade.
Yeah.
Where it's just next. It's like flipping through a book. They're not people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because of his fixation on her, they're even less of people because he doesn't. Yeah, he's not. He's like, whatever. I'm just here until she shows up.
Yeah.
And so that's a really fucking good way to depict a real thing, because that's what it feels like when you go to a fucking cattle call audition. Like, you do not feel like a fucking person at all. Yeah. And it's not built for that. Like, even though they are looking, I mean, the trick, this is sort of maybe a little inside baseball, but like the trick of being a good auditioner is you are there to be yourself and not to be this idea of a thing that you think they want to get.
Yeah.
And that's largely how successful people get through, is that they show up with their essence and they forget about the dehumanizing aspect of that whole process, because it's pretty easy to fall into it.
From the filmmaker's point of view, and this is actually what I meant this is in general, but I do think Takashi Miike said this, is that, yeah, to your point, you're casting the person based off of the moment they walk in the room.
Yeah, and it's a really challenging thing from the acting side, but it's also challenging from the behind the table side.
To get back to what you started saying, is like the humor of it, I think, is that where it sort of shows, okay, yeah, all we do really need is to see the person walk in the room. So having her like spin around so we can see her butt or whatever they're doing and like say these lines, all of that is superfluous.
Well, and I mean, it is and it isn't. It's like, it's showing us the absurdity of that scenario.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And how, based on your perspective, like if you're the auditioner, it's exactly like they're playing up the sort of the pitfall of being an auditioner, which is coming in and thinking, oh, this is what they want to see. Like, I'm going to fall into this trap of like, oh, well, this is a cattle call for attractive 30-year-old women. Like, I'm going to be the one who does something, you know, to really like stake my claim and like take off my shirt or whatever. And then like, so they go through all these different things where it's just like, it's cringeworthy because it's like,
well, and as a sort of a crazy serial killer or whatever you want to call her, Asami, she uses that self-awareness that we're like, or that awareness that we're talking about, that the dudes don't have, in order to sort of further get his trust and seduce him. Meaning like by saying, when he says, oh, well, you know, I checked with this manager or whatever, and they said, you know, he hasn't been there in forever kind of thing. And she says, oh, well, I knew that I was supposed to do that to make my resume look better or whatever. Like, that's just her... Yeah, exactly.
But that is a thing that exists very much so in this sort of industry of like trying to get ahead, and you know, you lie, you but like fudge your resume. But
she's using that ridiculousness, just an awareness to get
I mean, I think that is sort of a maybe it's just because I've lived in that world for so long, but like, I guess from somebody who hasn't, like, this is doing a really good job of giving sort of an inside look at that world. And then, I mean, that's to say before it all goes off the fucking rails. I mean, but the movie is called Audition, right? Yeah. It's not, you know, it's not the sadist serial killer. It's Audition, and that's a big part of this movie. And I was not expecting that, to be honest. I was expecting it to be more of the second, like, or last third. Like, I thought the whole movie was going to be that kind of thing, but it's not. It's quite a lot more of a commentary on how fucked up auditioning is, and like just that whole world. Well, let's I like that.
What worked for me, and to kind of move the discussion forward, as far as like thinking, okay, well, how does the title Audition take on further meaning? And I think there's a lot there with sort of their discussions of her saying like, I want to be my total true self to you, and that sort of being an obsession point from her. And then also just this kind of greater question that I was really hooked to me of like, what does it mean to be, you know, in love with someone? Like, he's acting as if, you know, he's in love, but it's like, when you say that, I guess the question is, to what extent is at any point you don't know to what extent the full person is that you're loving, you know? And that's the movie's kind of an exploration on that in a lot of ways.
It's dark as fuck, because that is a reality that we have to kind of in life grapple with. You never actually know somebody.
Yeah, it's like, and from his like, he's the put together, you know, fatherly, successful producer, you know, professional widow character, but it's like he's puppy love. His son seems more mature than him in his kind of like dating love outlook in a way. Yeah. You know? So I don't know. I just found that
I mean,
a lot to get into.
That's the thing. I mean, that's why I think the title is so apropos, or even just using that as your baseline theme is so like significant. Life and relationships are essentially or auditions are a microcosm of relationships in life. Like, we are constantly effectively auditioning each other all the time.
Right, because no matter what, you will never know. It's impossible to know if everything about the other person is true, or it's the whole picture. It's all... We are all living behind a facade of presentation. So, like, you have those scenes where it's like, okay, this is Asami's apartment where she's keeping the person in the bag and just waiting for the phone call. But the movie plays that where that could just be Aoyama, our main dude's just insecurities just on display, or fears of on their first date, his head just flashing to what's the worst possible thing this person could be.
Well, and I think the way that is depicted is fucking amazing because there is a lot of kind of, I don't know if you would call it misdirection per se, but there's a lot of blurring of, well, it is misdirection because we're being presented with things under the assumption that, like, in the movie, that is the narrative.
Right, like she's waiting for the phone call.
Exactly. So we don't necessarily know if this is... We are making the assumption that this is just the film, right? Not that this is in his head.
Yeah.
Until a certain point where that flips and you go, oh, wait a minute. What is and what has been just in his head? And you don't... Like, all of that gets kind of thrown
because it's
upside
like
down.
for that location scene that we go back to, whatever. So he gets at a certain point that there was, if she possibly, maybe she committed this murder to her previous boss or whoever it was, and yet there was an extra tongue and 3 fingers there. And so he just, in his imagination, perhaps, of this room that she's waiting for the phone call in, her little apartment hovel, those, like, the person who lost those is possibly, like, he imagines, or they're there.
Because we know...
The tongue appears separated, it's still moving and alive, like, a year after it would be.
So this is what I think is so cool about the structure of this movie, is that if you take every scene that he is not in, I mean, every scene that that has to do with her that he is not in, it's progressive. So the first time we see her alone in her apartment or whatever with the guy in the bag, we don't know that there's a guy in the bag, but he's there.
Unless you watch the trailer.
Right, exactly. I knew that bit just because it's like the thing that people talk about.
It's one of the biggest jump scares in horror history.
So, which bummed me out because I was like, oh yeah, there it is. I was like, I wish I didn't know that, but whatever. So the first time we see that, he is in a space where he's contemplating calling her. And the only information he knows and the only reason he's not calling her is because his buddy has said, hey, I looked up this reference of hers and that guy is missing. So that seed of thought has been planted for him. And so we can, after we've seen the movie, we can actually make a jump to say that is just his imagination. Her in the room is just how he imagines her. And that the unnaturalness of the body jumping through the air, sort of the bagged body flies upward in this very strange, like that's not, it sort of seems to defy the laws of physics a little bit.
I don't know if I go that far.
It doesn't quite seem right to me, but whatever. So that all could just be in his head. Like we're not getting information that he doesn't already have that he could create this scene in his head. It's just
his why when his head filling in when his friend goes, maybe you shouldn't just be so quick to trust her.
Right. And I love that they kind of continue that thread on, and up till a certain point, you're thinking that's just what's happening in the movie, but what's without the undercutting of the, like, oh, actually, shit, most of that was probably just in his head.
Well, okay.
I love that because it's just it's ambiguous, and I love that it's ambiguous.
I think what I loved about it and why I wanted to put it and buy it is that it does more. It doesn't stop at just, okay, so all this was in his head. There's a clear thing that it does. I mean, at a certain point to let you know, oh wait, we don't know what's up and what's down anymore at all. And at that moment, for me, I mean, maybe this is probably, of course, deliberate, but so we have the whole thing, where it leads to him getting tortured and his first foot gets cut off.
Fuck.
And then so we flash back to the night in hotel that was supposed to be their like big proposal night together, and he checks his foot. So it's like, okay, so clearly so in movie watching terms, what we know at this point, that means in our movie logic we're familiar with, all that was just a dream that he had. Yet then it all starts again. Like it goes back to it. Like,
well, it's not that it starts again, though, right? It's that we just jump cut back into
yeah.
the torture,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we're still, like, we have no reliable narration
Right.
here. Like, we do not know what the fuck is real or if this is, like, why do that?
Well, I think that's...
I mean, it's amazing that
it
that's
gives
how
us,
it's done, but
I guess, what it's
like,
trying to say, it gives us evidence both ways. Of, like, if it's a dream, if it's in his head or not.
Here's what my takeaway actually of that specific, that is structured and how we're left with that is effectively to step away and to say, even the things that are in our head, they might as well be real.
Yeah.
Like, there's no real difference between our imagined life and our waking life.
Or movies we go see.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's
We're
blurring.
a dream with who's the dreamer if we're all in the dream.
Right. And an audition is a sort of a microcosm of that as well. Insofar as you're presenting yourself under the guise of a character or whatever. You know what I mean? You're playing this pretend thing. It's all an imagined interaction.
Right.
And like, you can keep kind of slicing that and it's all still the same thing, right? Even the interaction with the auditioner is a kind of a facade made up faux thing.
In order
right?
to make
like, you're not
a facade made up faux thing.
Exactly.
That then is
It's like
also a
never
real
ending.
thing depending on who's watching it.
Right, because you're having the real experience.
Yeah.
So that whole kind of, it's like I feel like there's like an analogy to make here. It's I guess it's sort of the snake eating its tail kind of thing. It's just like, it's this circular thing of like, no matter how you slice it, it's all, the two sides of the coin of reality.
And this is, I feel like, what we always kind of end up trying to describe for the best of these horror movies that we watch.
It's true. Yeah, when you're left with just enough of that sort of question or blurriness.
Again, don't
or
leave us any
ambiguity.
ground to stand on.
Yeah. It's the best, because then we're like, wait, fuck.
So, and I think just to say, I want to, call it more specific moments, how it was
for sure.
supporting all this. Where I said almost watching it this time where I felt like it was about to almost lose me, but then picked me up and then some, was when, so we have him go to the, like, where she apparently used to work, and then he gets some clues there, and it's kind of this very, just seems like a familiar procedural.
Does he go there first, or does he go to the ballet first? He goes at the bar first, right?
That's the point I'm making, because
Yeah.
that sets you up just to sort of be like, okay, this is just a kind of like whatever. Now we're just in the procedural part of this movie, and I'm getting kind of bored with that because whatever, I've seen that before. So then it's like, we think when he goes to the ballet next, it's like he sees that it's closed down, and we're just gonna go like, okay, that's okay. Well, there's our clue there, is it's closed down.
Right.
That's funny. No. He hears piano playing inside and goes inside, and it's so still dreamlike.
It's so
at
funny
this
too,
point.
because
Like, this guy's still alive in there. Like,
at this point, I bought it. I was bought in completely. I was like, yeah, I guess that ballet dancer guy who has no feet is still just hanging out. Like, what? Why the fuck did I buy that?
Right.
That's insane.
because it's just a nut. Like, an insane person could do that.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But then once we get to that point, Tim, is just when I kind of fell in love and was like, oh, great. That's how smart to, like, this is what makes this movie great here, is to usurp those expectations. Yeah, because he gets, and it's like we learn it's it's her abusive uncle.
Oh, was he related? I didn't quite catch that.
I'm pretty sure it was uncle.
Okay. And he's the ballet teacher.
And that introduces an element that's another just sort of through line what we're talking about blurring realities, is it introduces showing Asami, our main gal, as what her past possibly was, but then like just in the filmmaking, how it's doing it element, showing her as her younger 10-year-old self or whatever.
Right.
So, and then using that 10-year-old self version of her just to sort of intersperse with like her older self, just to sort of, okay, well, there shows it's the same, very, very, very damaged person.
Well, now correct me if I'm wrong too, but in let's call it reality, when they're at the beach house, right before he's going to propose, right before they're going to like presumably have sex for the first time, she says, "Look at my body," and she shows him the scars on her legs. In that moment, she tells him the story of the ballet, or no? She just says that, and he's left to...
It's when their first date happened, or one of their first dates at dinner, where the first time we see it, we don't see the whole conversation. But then later in the movie, we cut back to that same date, and we hear her, like, whole story. So that's where we're maybe supposed to think, okay, so this is where his sort of suspicions and fears of, like, how messed up she is because of being abused sort of kick in.
But we can make the leap then that all of that's still in his head.
Yeah, I think starting from that first date, it's like when it could start with the idea that everything in his head is based off of her revealing to him her messed up story.
Right. And that messed up story, again, is completely unreliable.
Yeah.
Like, we can't know. Except
maybe we have the evidence of that actually happened later in the hotel, and she has those scars. Something's obviously wrong with her. She was abused somehow.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's not
right. She could just
legitimately answered.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what I'm pointing
more
at,
to my ideal read on it is always like, it's all true.
Sure.
That's where
I like
fun.
The idea that every bit of craziness that we see is in his head.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's purposeful. They're giving us that conceit that, like, hey,
it's true. I like that just as much because, like, to see someone, he's clearly uncomfortable what he's doing. Like, he feels that, I don't want to say, like, the Japanese shame, like, of admitting to his son that it's a younger woman he's seeing, like, and all that stuff. So what I'm saying is, like,
even the shame of like the idea of wanting to be with somebody after you've
exactly, like,
he's
turning the picture away,
become a widow, like that. That
it,
alone,
I
just think that is so like I get very on board with that type of, I don't know, storytelling or that construct of, like, shit, dude, like, we're fragile.
Yeah.
And, like, our psyches are very close to just being broken all the time.
This is a running thing for me when we talk about our Japanese films, but, like, how much I relate to the stereotype of the people and the culture and their kind of inbred insecurities and strengths. But, like, him feeling that, like, turning the picture around of the wife who's passed away and feeling that kind of, like, guilt and shame, when we all kind of can, I think, objectively be like, yeah, well, you're always going to feel that way, but hey, man, like his son says, it's, you still got more life to live, kind of thing.
Right. Be
happy. So we just want to be like to people like that, and to ourselves, if we can relate to that. Well, why are you this way? Just do it, man. And then like you were saying, the imagination of all this horrible stuff, the possibilities, that is what answers that why, is because we have this, like, we can never be certain, like we talked about earlier in loving someone, we can never be 100% certain about anything. So it's like that connecting to that, it's sort of, I'm trying to draw the line between that shame and just sort of the idea of being afraid of connecting that to it's not knowing.
It's literally what anxiety is.
Yeah.
It is what anxiety is. This whole movie is just an exercise in anxiety.
So if his son's like, yo, bro, whatever, like, go out there and get a wife, like, but what if... And then that's the movie.
Right. That's exactly it. Because, that's it. That's what anxiety is. Anxiety is basically the what if. Like, and we are constantly trying to mediate that.
But
within ourselves. Like, how far down the what ifs am I going to go?
Right. Because it doesn't matter how ridiculous this gets, because it's like,
Dude,
You
I mean,
can't tell someone they're wrong that it's not a literal possibility.
That's right. But we do this all the time, and it's something that has always fascinated me. I think this is why screenwriting is so fun to me, because it is also just a series of what ifs. Like, the exciting part about like coming up with a story is just going down those dominoes of what if. Like, what if this? Oh, and then if that happened, then what if this happens? Like, I love that. But I think part of why I love that is because I'm prone to doing that just in general. And I think a lot of people are, right? Like, we go down these rabbit holes in our heads anytime you're dating. Like, anytime there's a potential for it to go badly, you're playing the game of, shit, if I said this and then this happened and then, maybe that made them feel this way, and then maybe they're not going to do this, or maybe they will. And if they do that, then we're going to be over here. And then I shouldn't say this the next time. Or like, you're like, all of that's made up.
Right. Well, and
we are good. Some people, I mean, I think I'm good at getting down into those, like way down into them. You play out an entire lifetime after fucking, you've had one interaction with somebody.
And I want to like turn that around, because we're speaking in terms of coming off this film. And I think maybe what you and I relate more to is like that uncertainty in regards to dating or whatever like that, and other people, significant others. But you can have someone who's like, yeah, man, whatever, but you never know. And that's what I find myself saying to people who like have insecurities where I don't so much as far as, but should I take this job? Should I move to this country? I don't know. Should I do this? And that's for me where it's kind of like, yeah, dude, I don't know. I'm not as caught up. Maybe this is saying, yeah, I relate to this dude. But I could see this also being a story of someone like, this could be the job from hell. Like, you could tell this story where it's just like, the story about this is focused on romantic relationships.
Sure. But it's all what you decide. The story that you tell yourself and that you create is completely up to you. Mm-hmm. This whole movie could exist, and all of the dream sequence shit could just be this lovely fantasy.
Right.
It's the same exact thing. We're just pointing at the side of us that goes down the dark path.
What we should always remind ourselves is, but there's good what ifs.
That's right. I mean, that's sort of an amazing thing, and to like have a movie that's pointing at all of this is cool.
Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about? All right, let's just talk about the torture.
Okay. The torture scene and
now that we've
specifics,
had a philosophy fucking
the horror
conversation,
the visceral horror we can get into. Yeah. I mean, that was great watching it with our friend Max was there too, and both of you were very reactionary to like after she's stabbed all the needles into him, how she crawls up, saddles up on him.
Dude. Like, that blew my mind, because I was like, wait a minute, aren't those just embedding in her like thighs, and like
she's just kind of pushing them
she
forward.
Didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Oh, it was that shit was brutal. I didn't I guess I somewhere along the line had been told about sort of the needle thing, even just in a general way.
Right.
Because I remember before we started this, I was like, I'm a little scared to watch this, because like I'm not a big fan of needles. But I didn't know what was done with the needles in the actual movie. And this was way different than what I thought was going to happen.
I mean, it's a hypodermic needle that we get that. Like, she puts it in his tongue and but to paralyze him. And then, of course, all the needles in question.
Shit, dude. When she opens that case and like spreads the needles out and there's like 1,000 of them, I was like, fuck, where are those gonna go?
Kind of everywhere.
Before I knew that it wasn't going into his actual eyeball, they use a sound effect of sort of like a membrane bursting when because it's a POV of him looking at her putting them into what ends up being just this fleshy skin under his eye. So like, but fuck, dude, the visceralness of that, the poking impact and then the rupture like sound effect of the needle like making its way through the skin membrane
sound design
was amazing and hurt to to experience. It was very difficult for me to not just like yell.
Yeah.
Which I was doing to some degree. But my eyes started pouring water. I was like, it was so intense to me that like I was having this physical response of like my eyes started to water and like drip out the sides of like, don't touch your eyes.
Yeah.
It was gnarly. And I don't mean that like I was in the sort of tears way. I mean it in the like flooding, like protect your eyes way. It was fucking intense.
My favorite aspect, I mean, I agree. All that was great. I loved it. But my personal favorite aspects of the torture scene were both their performances. So,
Dude.
So that was apparently an on-set addition. Her saying deeper, deeper, deeper.
Oh my God. That was very unsettling.
That was like the, Singing in the Rain kind of equivalent for me, Clockwork Orange.
Oh, right.
The actual,
I was like, Singing in the Rain.
but, adding just a little kind of, but
Gene Kelly really improv that dance scene.
You don't remember that torture scene? Singing in the Rain? Yeah, her performance where it's just like it's like, okay, she's simultaneously like, okay, this is how that sort of unrealistic, like obedient ideal, like Japanese girl kind of stereotype is with her cutesy thing, but it's this context, this super S&M, crazy context.
Oh my God.
So it was just that juxtaposition I just loved. So, and how she again carried herself through all that, I thought was just incredible. The performance, it could so, and I think actually this is what they said was her concern was playing it just on the level where it wasn't going to become, you weren't going to lose the sort of weight of how horrific it was, but it only just sort of added to, it had to strike that exact right balance of where like any laughter wasn't going to be totally on the spectrum of comedy. It had to be like uncomfortable.
Well, they did a good job
horrific because it's still real.
Like we talked about this a couple episodes ago. I forget what the context was, but the idea of like the empty sort of vessel, the actor who is that empty thing, then we're like filling it in.
Oh yeah.
She's got that thing.
Bill Murray in The Dead Don't Die.
Was that who it was?
Maybe,
I don't
know.
remember. But that is, I think they cast well. They found that thing because that thing is sort of iconic with this particular type of character. Like the quote unquote femme fatale character, historically speaking, generally isn't like a, like, oh, she's evil looking thing. She's just generally a fairly blank slate. Well, and we do a good job with the context to fill that in. And this actress,
she's
right in there.
What we're filling in, I think, is that we are seeing some sort of unshakable worldview on display on their part.
Oh, yeah.
We are being, her doing and doing what she's doing. It's like, great. This is all of a sudden we're just seeing in a very observational way. Oh man, this is this person's world they live in, as I said. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and
that's what's so scary is
that's her normal.
Yeah. Like, oh God.
Because she's not like,
twisted,
look how fucking crazy I am. She's just like...
And it's scary because like she's someone who knows how to work the system, how to like seduce him and get what she wants kind of thing. So she's clearly... There's something I think maybe especially scary and sinister, and it's why like our favorite kind of villains are the really intelligent ones or just kind of, masterful in that kind of intellectual sense. She was.
Assuming any of this was real.
Yes. played though, I think, acted.
Oh yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about in these terms. And then so my other, actually to come off of that being realistic, his performance, like I loved him. You don't think for playing someone paralyzed there would be a lot to it, but he brought so much to the idea of being paralyzed, where it's like at one point she says something and she said, God, what was it? But it was basically like, oh, you you think you can do this, or you believed in that, and it was actually like something that was misinformation. Like if he could speak, he would say, no, I didn't do that,
right,
or
yeah.
kind of thing, or that's not actually totally true.
Like he cannot defend himself.
But then you see him just, try to like especially move his fingers in that moment.
Yeah, I sort of went back and forth in my like feelings of where's the line when we're supposed to believe you're paralyzed, like how much you can actually move. But I was like, well, you kind of don't have a scene if he can't move even a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he's just completely still, it doesn't
relates
work.
to if you have like sleep paralysis kind of thing, where
Sure.
it's like, yeah, you it just takes a lot of work, but you can kind of move your fingers or get out
But
a
you can't
noise or shake a
really
little.
do anything.
Yeah.
Like you don't have any articulation. You just
How he sold
You're
it,
fucked.
the level at which he could move was just so perfect. Like seeing him just shake a little.
Yeah,
Oh,
I like
God.
that he could kind of raise his head, but nothing else, like
Yeah.
that thing. So he could like, something happened, and he kind of his head comes towards the camera. We
Right.
get this like very nice like
Sees his son coming.
wide in his face, and he like comes up towards it. It's cool. It's
so
distorted. It's
I
cool.
mean, and also maybe to switch to the other sort of explicit horror scenes back in her apartment, her captor, her man into dog
right.
captor, like holy crap him. She force feeds it. No, he doesn't. She doesn't force feed him anything. He begs to drink her vomit from.
Is that
a
what
bowl.
that is?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. I thought it was just like slop, like
Well,
shitty
it is.
slop food. That's supposed to be her vomit? Mm-hmm. Bro.
And he's like,
It's a buy for me.
yeah,
No, it's not.
right.
That is this fucking disgusting.
He like goes over. He's got stumps for feet. His tongue's
He's got the
taken
one
out.
finger that's like his ring finger, and it's like
Talk about themes of like S&M and all that, and just
Sure.
sort of like the in control captor scenario.
Wow.
Like you can't get more
brutal.
than that. Yeah, but I mean, seeing him walk, and there was just something about the specificity of like he just has a few fingers missing, but then just sort of the horror of imagining he gets to the point where this captor gets to the point where he's the highlight of his life is drinking her vomit like out of a dog bowl. Like she's twisted him that much, and that sort of is like you can't think of I don't know if this is about sort of maximizing her to the extent of what ability can she control others. I can't think of getting further than that.
Yeah. Oh man, this is like making me fucking
Right?
feel very unpleasant.
Well, we are watching horror movies here, Tim.
That barf is like one of my limits. I don't like it.
It's great.
So to carry on with horrible things,
Uh-huh.
the tool that wire saw,
Piano wire.
so that's an actual saw tool that that like
Cuts right through bone.
it's I mean, I've seen it in like what's called like a go pack or a bug out bag. It's like in a survivalist sort of handbag of tools because it can be small and it's lightweight, but it's a really, really good effective tool for cutting things like trees. If you're out in the woods and you need to collect some firewood and you
Or the head off of a deer.
or the head off of a deer, exactly. So it's an actual tool. It's a fucking gnarly tool, and I don't think I've ever seen it in a movie. I just know it exists.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's one thing to see it used with decapitating the ballet guy.
Yep.
That's fine, and I think there's some sort of distance from that.
Just find him.
But the ankle was unacceptable.
You mean in the best of ways?
In the best of ways. It was fuck. It was the amount that they show of that, and I'm also a little sensitive to this because I've torn my Achilles, and I just had this thought like as she's as it's getting through the skin, and I'm like, that's I know what that feels like actually when you rupture your Achilles. And it's not even that. It's like she's sawing it. The rest of the ankle, not just the Achilles, is rupturing. But I'm like, adding that to the idea of it was so fucking intense for me. And man, they showed a lot. It's like it is on camera.
Funny, the thing that hits me, I don't know, I'm just kind of who I am. I like disassociate from kind of the horror of being able to immediately feel something. Like it gets me kind of after the fact. Mm-hmm. So high tolerance for that stuff. So what got me like most about that foot, I almost said decapitation, depedication. Is the moment it becomes like it's not his foot anymore, when it's sort of loosely hanging and then sort of hits the ground like a ball. There's just something about that is the horror that hits me, of just sort of being like, all of a sudden something that you considered you, or like a piece of you to make you complete, is no longer.
Yeah. That is intensely brutal. You know what else I thought was amazing? This is my takeaway, so I'm not entirely sure this is what this means. But so the ballet teacher is wearing somebody else's feet.
The uncle guy, yeah.
Right? And so my assumption or my connection is he's wearing the feet of the captor, because the captor has no feet. When he crawls out of the bag, he's footless. Mm-hmm. And so I made this, maybe it's a jump, but that she
helped him out.
Why would she do, like, so his feet were all fucking fucked up from being maybe a ballet person?
One more kind of just weird thing to muddle it all, just missing feet. What, huh?
Yeah, but the grossness of a person wearing somebody else's feet was quite good. I think that's all I have on my list of like...
We touched on it, but I just want to emphasize again, I really loved that idea of, I think we said that in the way intro, of him, unconsciously, what he wants is like the obedient wife. Mm-hmm. And it's I don't know, it's just interesting to me, the idea is he could, like, she presents himself to him as he could have that if he is also obedient in the way that she wants to her.
So this kind of brings me to my last big, broader thematic point.
Yeah.
In that there's a commentary happening, which I think is kind of amazing that this is happening in 99, because it is very prevalent now. Maybe, it's always existed, because we live in this sort of male-dominated, patriarchal, misogynistic society. But it's much more prevalent and outspoken now, this idea of like, oh, women are damaged, they're broken, or they, trauma, like they've all experienced trauma, and that has colored them into this like broken thing. That's sort of an ongoing, like I even speak with women who bring this up, and they're like, yeah, I'm tired of being pegged as, oh, I've got daddy issues, or lumped into this idea. I know,
you're right. And I used it
me.
Earlier saying, like, because of her abuse, she's a broken person. You're right.
But that's what I'm saying, is this movie is presenting that construct, or that idea.
Right.
And playing off of it. But like I said before we sort of started this, that was where I started, and watching the movie feeling like, this is potentially a little problematic for me now in 2019. But because the movie ultimately is sort of saying this is very likely just his brain going off, into speculation land, that makes sense that he would go there and go down that pathway, because that is the prevalent way that society has framed how we as men view women. Mm-hmm. And so it's speaking to that rather than kind of being tropey about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty awesome, for considering that it's 20 years ago. It's 20 years ago. None of that shit was being talked about.
I get caught up in the words around it. Because if you're a man or a woman and you're abused, it's so easy. Like, we get it, what it means, and it sort of feels, it doesn't feel wrong to say, like, oh yeah, because, you know, they're a broken person now. But like, I really hate that, because that assumes then there is something to fix, as if there's this clear like delineation marker that you just have to cross, and then all of a sudden you're saved. So
right. Well, yeah, there's a reason that those ideas exist, is because they've been pushed.
Right. And I just I hope we can find better language for that all.
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, I think ultimately we're broadly moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And the art is speaking to it more loudly, and that's good.
Yeah.
But I think it's really amazing that this is right fucking there
And,
20 years ago.
Yeah. And I think maybe why I brought that up to that idea of like she'll be obedient for him if he's obedient for her, is I wonder if this is sort of, you're looking at it as a story playing out sense. Do you think that the only reason she tortures him is because he breaks that by still loving his son and having the pictures of his wife up? Because when she gets there, she already has her toolkit, but it seems like what sets her off is seeing that picture of the wife. So is it sort of like it's optional, she's waiting to figure it out, or is she definitely going to do it, you know?
I mean, it seems to me like she's showing up with intention. You know, she's showing up with the stuff. She's breaking into his place. She's already decided that here's what's, I think, actually quite amazing about this. If you were to look at this movie just through her point of view, she's doing a lot of the same things that he's doing, insofar as she's making these leaps in her imagination about his loyalty, or like what he can or should give to her, right? So it almost doesn't matter when she's gotten the information. She's doing the same thing. She's assuming, based on her imagination, that he cannot live up to the thing that she wants, which is exactly what he's been doing with her. Like, he's going down this rabbit hole of like, oh shit, because of these like 3 pieces of information, I'm going to go down this fucking rabbit hole of she's damaged and she's this and she's that, and that means this will happen and that means this, and here's the most extreme version that we get to eventually of that line of thought. It's all these horrible things.
Yeah.
She potentially, if we're looking at it from her point of view, is kind of doing the same thing. Like, she's just making the leap that he's incapable of being loyal because he's a man.
Right. She's got her boat, you know, that's her example of her need for certainty that one can never have, that he has, that, you know, the movie's about.
And from from a sort of stepping back point of view, that is essentially one of the main sources of problems in any relationship.
Yeah.
You cannot assume to know or get what you want from the other person. You have to just be okay.
I know, it's hard, man. I've like,
no shit.
like, I don't know. I feel like I'm still learning, but like I say to someone, like, it's like, oh no, I mean, in 10 years, I can't promise I'll still be with you. What? You know, it's like, I'm like, yeah, but of course, because I mean, but I'm just like so overly literal that way.
That's right. Yeah.
But that's how I think about it. And that's, I don't know. I think it's because to speak in those terms, it's always acknowledging our impermanence.
That's right, and we have been told that we need to have the certainty.
Yeah.
That the certainty is what makes it real, and that's fucking bullshit.
So, do you think there's a general difference with what men and women need for receiving that certainty?
I don't know, because I think the gender thing is. I think we are really prone to being sort of binary about it.
Yeah.
And
I guess that's why I said generally. But
yeah, like in my personal, like I find that I tend to have I lean more in sort of, or relate more to what is traditionally thought of as like a feminine point of view of those things. And so I'm like, well.
Of wanting the commitment?
Oh, just of like the tropes of like where somebody's coming from when they're framing what they want out of a relationship. And so I just don't think it's gender specific, but I think, yeah, there are trends that we see. That's why they exist. But like, it's a little chicken and egg, right? Like, did the trend exist because it was inherent, or is it inherent because the trend existed?
Yeah.
Right. Like we're feeding off of it anyway.
I mean, again, yeah, speaking generally, I think they are, there's some kind of difference there if you're speaking very generally. And I think this film, and all that ties to this, basically this baseline wanting certainty we can never have. If we can just accept that. And this film takes those ideas to their extreme. And I think that's why it's great.
Right. Yes, I agree. Because if you were to just say, like, in the most broad terms, men are from Mars, women are from Venus type idea.
You'd sell a lot of books, but...
Yeah. That men are less prone to needing certainty than women. That's the norm
that's why
trope.
I used... in the norm tropes, I don't know if it's so much... Men, I want to say, need it less from certainty in terms of...
I don't think they need it less, but they present it as though...
Present it as less... I don't know, certainty in the form of long-term commitment. And I think for men, it's wanting that, again, very generally here, people, masculine, feminine traits, exist.
Right.
Commitment comes through acceptance in the present.
Right. And being able to, for the most part, try to exist there rather than in these... I mean, what this movie is doing is saying, here's two people who cannot exist in the present.
Right.
They just are incapable.
Again, like super...
He is completely torn between living in the past and living in this future that he's making up. We're kind of uncertain as to where she's living, but like... I mean, maybe she is really good at living in the present, actually, in the way that it's sort of depicted. That's an interesting idea, that she's right in the middle of the thing that he can't do. Again,
those sort of like inherent feminine versus masculine traits. Feminine is more the sort of building something a little more, creating the womb of the world, something that sort of makes sense in the bigger picture, smarter. And I think, in that sense.
Well, I mean, they do have 2 X chromosomes, which are a lot of information. It's like double the information that the dudes have. So,
damn it. And then men being immediate, stupid oafs.
Yeah, that's because we have a Y chromosome.
Yeah.
That Y is basically like, you're a dipshit. It's the dipshit chromosome.
Why? So we see if anything did not work for us. Anything else that worked?
Yeah, I guess that was my last big thing. That was a big thing. Oof.
All right. What did not
go on? Work.
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
I didn't have anything, Jim.
I mean, I kind of mentioned like the what I could argue is that sort of the first half being almost such a different movie, but it was fine. It didn't not work for me. I just didn't know what I was just surprised by it.
Felt a little slow when I watched it 10 years ago. Loved it to death this time, that first half.
God. Ooh. I don't... There's a lot we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
Because there's like the secretary character. There's a bunch of little things going on.
Yeah. Again, that's an example of his aloofness.
Right. I'm trying to just go through the things in the movie just to find something that didn't work.
I mean, hey. I came prepared with nothing for a reason because I couldn't think of anything.
I know. I just don't really want to try and pull something out of nothing.
Great. Well, we have another section.
That's crazy.
Move to. Thanks for listening.
How is this not a buy?
Maybe it is.
It's not, though.
I mean, because you can have a great movie that you just don't want to watch all the time.
Yeah. There was I don't know. No.
You would have cut more fingers off his hands.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a part of me that feels... Okay, yes. So this was the main thought I had while the movie was happening, while the torture was happening specifically, in that I very immediately started to go, oh, I don't know that this is serving the movie the level of gratuity. And I was like, it's 1999. It's like right in that sort of era of like the French new wave or whatever we called it. I forget what it's called.
Extremity.
That whole thing of the sort of torture porn era, Hostel and such. And I was like, fuck, I don't know. But having said that, as the scene progressed, as intense and fucked up as it had enough context and story sort of support to have it not just be exploitative torture porn. But it was close at a couple moments where I was like, does it really need to be this? Like, it might be too much.
Well, I mean, I think it could have even gone further if the whole justification for any of the horrible stuff that happens in this film is how bad can one's imagination be.
I know. So that's why it's not really... that's why I didn't put it into a list, right, of things. But in just sort of broadly looking at it, it's almost a thing that
the little voice in you that's like, why, but why do any of this at all? Like
yeah.
When I was numb after one of the films we watched from all these horror movies.
Yeah. But it's okay. It's fine.
Okay. Great.
It almost didn't work for me. Let's put it that way.
Then we can move on to some section with things I do have. Things of
note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
You mentioned kind of where this was in context with other quote-unquote torture porn films. Mm-hmm. I think it was just kind of noteworthy to mention, what's the word I'm looking for? Emphasize how fresh this was for 1999, though.
Agreed. It is before all of that shit.
It's really, I think you could watch it nowadays, someone who just sees it as a 15, 20-year-old film and just be like, oh yeah, well, I've seen Hostel, this wasn't so bad kind of thing. No, this opened it. This did it wide up. Like what I was saying again about cat people opening up unseen stalkers. A trope in horror films. Walking down an alley at night. Like this did for
shake them trees.
Yeah, this did for quote unquote torture porn. Like I don't know, man. This is kind of, it doesn't get better. I think, as I said, just earlier in responding to your what didn't almost work for you, it's justified so well.
Yeah.
Super effective. And just again, I think when we're part of this show too is trying to contextualize it where now and then how it was at the time, since we're still closely enough to attach to having been in 99, you and I.
99. What a fucking year.
20 years ago, man.
Let me tell you, I was out of control. I was a junior in college? No. I guess it was between sophomore and junior year was 99. Oh boy.
Tim, I know you got a lot behind those eyes of yours. All coming out in 99. Dude. We're going to party like it's 1999,
Holy
right?
Shit. I'll give you a little bit of context. I was in a all-male, professional, semi-professional a cappella group on Martha's Vineyard for the summer of 99. It was the first year I was ever on that.
Learning that
island.
About you really did plug in a lot about your story.
So, I come from a fairly sort of, I guess you could kind of say, like my family's not blue collar, but I kind of grew up in blue collar areas, and my family, like my dad's an academic, he's a professor, so take that for what it's worth. But I had never really been in like quote unquote rich areas. Like that didn't really exist where I grew up. Like rich was like, oh, you had a big yard.
So what
I'm getting at is you go to Martha's Vineyard and you're singing like your job is to sing a cappella, which is inherently nerdy and weird for super rich people. And like just the level of like over the topness that you're being paid to like engage in, and then going home and living in a house with, you know, whatever it was, 9 other 20-year-old dudes. Like it was like I was never in a frat, but I guess it was sort of in that realm.
Everybody Wants Some? The follow-up to Dazed and
Confused?
No,
No, but I bet it's very similar.
It's really good.
You know, and so we you know, it's like a frat, but nerds.
Yeah.
It's a nerd frat.
Yeah.
So
honestly, that's what frats are. Like we just,
in a way,
sports
but
people are the nerdiest people. I'm sorry.
Yes, I agree. But in the way that it's like there's certain things that go along with
in
the idea
Revenge of the Nerds way.
Right. The idea of frats. Oh God. I mean, that movie is the most fucking misogynistic movie.
So
of all
how
time.
would
my point being is it was just like we were 20 and living in a house and being paid to do something that was fun. And like singing all the time, it was just drunken party all the time.
Right,
that's all it was. On the beach, it was crazy. Like it blew my mind open.
So how would
fun.
that Tim have reacted to Audition if you had that summer gone to the local theater and seen Audition?
I think it would have broken me
Even further open.
Yeah,
or apart.
Apart. I don't know. That's a fucking crazy thing to think. I think we would have loved it.
Yeah.
Like that group would have been like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Would have loved it.
Yeah.
So, talking about how, you know, I was saying, I can relate to the themes and the main character and this and all a lot. Takashi Miike was really surprised how well it played outside of Japan. It actually didn't play great in Japan. It was only sort of when it found its international audience, it became a cult hit or whatever. But he thought only the Japanese would understand, as he put it, quote, the intensely private feelings of the main character. Mm-hmm. So he was surprised that, hey, no, actually, we aren't all the American stereotypes in America. Vice versa is true too.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting and cool. He was surprised by that.
I like how, you know, I tend not to try and read the end of the Wikipedia until we get here. But like we're not wrong in our conversation. And I like that seeing sort of confirmation of where we went with it. 'Cause like one of the first thing it says is like, this movie's been read as both feminist and misogynistic.
Yeah.
It is. And I think that's really cool that it's accomplishing, you know, I don't think it's one or the other by any means, but people are taking both of those, like it's both in there. Like we're seeing it, it's reflecting those things. And that's really fucking cool. Yeah,
I forgot about this website, but there's a blog, like a truth and movies website called Little White Lies. And there's this article that came out, I think, it was just, written by a woman in the last year or so. That's just the title, is Why Takashi Miike's Audition is a Piercing Feminist Film in Disguise. There's so much more to this J-horror hit than meets the punctured eye. By Daisy Phillipson.
Nice.
Looks like a good blog. I'll check it out. So I also learned fun stuff about Miike and his relation to himself as a filmmaker. He said this was in a recent interview that he kind of rejects the notion that he only does violent films. He said he's done 80 films and it's the distributors and the audience who sort of choose what they see or focus on and how they define him. And so, yeah, even if he kind of doesn't identify with that totally, he does acknowledge it and have fun with it. He says, like, whenever he travels and does interviews and goes to film festivals, whatever, he says, even though he's not the kind of person who he doesn't see himself as a violence and horror director, he says he has a lot of fun with that label when he can, but it feels like he's sort of stepping into a role when he does it, because he's made family films, he's made crazy stuff. I know, and I haven't seen a lot of his others. I want to see. I think we have Ichi the Killer on our list.
Yep.
I've seen Happiness of the Katamaris, a crazy, weird experimental movie I recommend. It's on Shudder. Yeah.
Cool.
He mentioned how the author who wrote the book that this was based on, he's also a filmmaker, and he directed a film on S&M.
Oh, really?
Or like was S&M themed, so makes sense there. Easy connection to draw and see. And then so the author's name, Ryu Murakami. So Miike, he called Murakami out on like, oh, so this movie is just a love letter to someone, huh? This is like a love confession love letter. And he's like, yeah, totally.
Oh, shit.
So this film comes from that place.
Yeah. The
main actor that we're talking about, the main guy in it, Aoyama, who played Aoyama, Ryo Ishibashi, he was in a rock group called the Alexander Ragtime Band, like all throughout the 1980s, from like late 70s to early 90s kind of thing.
Cool.
So if we're wondering why he looks maybe a little worse for wear, and older than his age, I wonder. It was
that rock and roll life is tough,
just
man.
like your a cappella life, Tim.
Telling you.
Your Martha's Vineyard.
Let me tell you,
life.
we wore so many pastels, it really wears you out.
And then lastly, I loved Miike. This was in the Wikipedia, how he cited Starship Troopers as his favorite film.
Wow.
Yeah, and he expressed admiration.
I know people who love that movie that much.
I do love it. I need to my favorite film.
I need to rewatch it because I did not like it.
I was obsessed with it as a kid. Gave it about a 12-year break. Rewatched it about a year ago. It's still just one of my favorite movies.
Wow.
He expressed admiration for directors Akira Kurosawa, David Lynch, David Cronenberg, Paul Verhoeven, and lastly, Hideo Gosha, the one, I guess, Japanese one on the list. But that just made me be like, okay, exactly. I'm like, who's that? So it just made me like, well, I got to see this guy's movies now.
Yeah, fucking A.
Because
do we know, did you look him up?
I looked it up. I didn't recognize any of the titles immediately.
Fair enough. Wow. Well, shit, dude.
Audition. Takashi
that was
Miike.
it. We fucking went into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good. There's more.
Yeah.
Like, we could go on, but
like
we
the
shouldn't.
best movies we could.
Yeah.
I think we covered it.
We sure did.
So like should we...
like a bed of needles.
We covered it.
Wait a minute.
Bed of needles. No, I think it was a little more thorough than the sparse bed of needles. But we did get in there. Kitty, 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 kitty. Deeper and deeper.
Ah!
Kitty, 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 kitty.
Oh my God. Just, what's so good about that is this is the separation, I think, from torture porn into just good. Is that we see the needle go, like, puncture the surface, but when she starts saying deeper and deeper, I think in our brains, we're imagining it, like, penetrating, like, the next layer of organs.
You
and
feel
then
it in the
next
bone.
layer of organs, and then the bone. You know what I mean? Like, that's fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
And, ugh.
And it's like her own just little joyous refrain to it all.
And you're right about his face sells that.
And her.
Woo!
Kitty, kitty, kitty. Okay. Enough of that. How about RecommenDEADtions?
So, I feel like it was 2 years ago, but I think it was 2 years ago, but maybe I'm wrong. I went to one of the Hollywood Cemetery Cinespia screening things for Drive, the movie Drive, by Nicholas Winding Refn.
I actually haven't seen it.
It's one of my favorite movies. He's definitely up there as one of my favorite directors.
He's got a new Amazon series.
So that's my recommendation. It is... I watched the first episode. Here's the crazy thing about this series. I think it's 13 episodes. Maybe it's 10. It's 10 episodes, but it's 13 plus hours of show. And if you like Refn at all, I think you'll really like the show. If you don't like Refn, don't watch this show. It is paced in such a fucking deliberately slow and like almost like you're underwater way. It's freaky how fucking slow he's like telling it's clear that it's a direction. He's saying, do not say anything in between your lines. Like, nobody say anything. Like, almost to the point where I'm like, did he just tell them to count to 10 in between everybody's fucking dialogue? Because it is just people looking at each other or just looking off into space and having a conversation. But shit, dude, I don't really like Miles Teller. He's the lead guy. He's fine in it, but the fucking way it is shot is so amazing to me. It's so beautiful to look at. There's also a scene with Billy Baldwin that is so gross. And I don't mean gross like graphic. He's just the grossest character ever.
Yes, but Tim, what's it called?
It's called Too Old to Die Young. Too Old to Die Young. Is that right? Too Old to Die Young.
Great.
It's on Amazon Prime. Fuck.
Cool.
I need to watch more of it.
I'm gonna finish up my recommendations for each Godzilla era.
Oh, right.
All right, last one from the Millennium Era. So the unique thing about the Millennium Era is what I loved about the one before it was that they were all chronological. They were all sequential, the sequel to one another. This one, there's only two that are go together. But otherwise, they just kept trying to reinvent the wheel each time in the Millennium films.
Okay.
And the one that they most reinvented the wheel on, where they completely kind of changed the metaphor of like what Godzilla represents, it worked. It was really, really cool, actually. And it was just sort of fun to see it different. But rather, they have Godzilla represent the forgotten, angry souls of all those who have died in war, versus like an atomic force itself is sort of that maybe that guilt or whatever, but sort of not remembering or not giving them their due kind of thing.
Wow.
And so he goes from kind of a monster with a bit more character in his eyes to he's like white-eyed in this one, like has a feel of like a shark or something, just this sort of unstoppable, like ghost force almost.
That's cool.
All the other, and it's it's Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, giant monsters all out attack.
That's the title.
Yes.
That whole thing's the title.
That whole thing is the title.
Enough.
I forget, people call it in the Godzilla circles like GMKG or something. They have a shortening.
Nice.
Abbreviation for it. But yeah, so it's got all those characters in it. And Anguirus too, who's one of my favorites. But it's like they got a completely different look to them than the other movies. It's really it does its own thing entirely and just sort of feels like the most outside whatever canon we do have. But just as a standalone movie, I had like so much fun with it.
What year was it?
2001.
Cool.
I think it was one of my favorites out of all of them, even though it kind of was an outsider. So check out that one. Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, giant monsters all out to attack.
Amazing. Well, what are we doing now?
Now we have to pull from our hat next week's film.
Okay, let me just reach over. Whoa, what's that? What's that noise?
Well, Tim, as you may know, that's our skull bike bell. It's not a warning to other road users in this context. You remember?
I'm remembering.
We got to stop each other from pulling from the hat with that bell to say, hey, we're actually going to go to theaters for our next episode here at Dismembering Horror. And we got one of our most anticipated horror films of the summer we're going to go see.
Midsummer.
Coming out in summer.
Oh,
perfect.
So excited.
Let's see how our boy Ari follows up Hereditary.
Jordan Peele said it was good.
Jordan Peele says I could do it. Jordan Peele says you jump off a bridge.
Our another podcaster we know said he saw it. Dan.
Yeah.
He's like, it's everything. I forget
Spooky
exactly.
Dan said it's everything he hoped for.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So I look forward to our day out. I hope you have a better movie going experience this time compared to when we saw Dead Don't Die.
Oh man, I went to Spider-Man Far From Home, the new Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, midnight screening.
And there was a dude in front of us who, I'm not joking. We were in the second row. He's in the first row. He's 55 probably. And I have to like move away from the mic here. This is what he would do. And the movie is super funny. Like there's amazing shit in it. But even on like little nods and like little sort of story things or like reference to comic books, he'd do this.
No way, that many claps?
Yes, that was the thing. Everybody around him, like we were all looking at each other like, what do we do? Like, he won't stop clapping.
You're going to tell someone not to clap, yeah. Like,
it was crazy.
You should have, if only the guy who sat next to you during Dead Don't Die could sit next to him. Like, when they bounce, would that be too much? Would black hole appear?
God, I think it would just, it would cause a singularity. Fuck. But it was fine.
Well, you should see it. If you're listening to this, you probably like horror movies. You know, and Hereditary is kind of a crossover where maybe a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily have seeked out a horror movie because they heard it was good, went and liked it.
Yeah.
So maybe you're that person too, and this is one you should go see.
Yeah.
But we don't know. We can't recommend it one way or the other if we'd avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it. But we'll find out next time. And until then, you can find us at dismemberinghorror.com.
Yep, and at dismemberinghorror@gmail, and on Instagram, and dishorrorpod on Twitter, and I'm at Tim Haslin. Everything's a question.
And I am at Mayor McDuffie on Instagram.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right. All those things. Could just go to the website.
Yeah, exactly. It's all there.
It's easy.
So, well, in closing, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening.
And we will see you next time. Goodbye. Kitty, 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 kitty.